Paula Coomber, Seaside Radio. Today I'm in Penny Grubb's house, and Penny is a local author, and she's got along here her friend Linda Acaster, who is also an author of
Talk of the Moonlight.
Talk of the Moonlight. Now, you're both local authors, and you both write about local places, but your genre is quite different.
Oh, absolutely.
Linda covers so many, horror, women, sci-fi.
Yes, I'm awkward. I can't be pigeonholed.
Yeah. Is there anything you haven't written?
Chick lit. I have been asked to write, or was asked by a publisher to write chick lit, and I went, what? No. I'll leave that to people. I have written romance. I'm still going to go back onto it, but usually I like the historical aspects. So I've got a medieval romance out, which is what the Americans call sweet, because they tend to band theirs in sweet, sensual, erotic, and then it goes very hot. So I've got to say, what's after erotic?
Sour?
No, they don't actually do a sour.
It's sour romance.
But then yours are crime.
They are crime. I've always turned back to crime. I have tried other things, but...
Is Annie Raymond based on anybody you know?
No, she isn't. I can't identify anybody that I know in Annie. Obviously there are little bits of people, and little bits of things that have happened over the years that have gone to build her. But I've been writing books about Annie for 15 years probably, just dabbling.
Right, and that's culminated in your 3 books now.
Only in the last few years they've been published, yes.
Right. Now, publishing, that's something I'm very interested in, because who are your publishers?
My hardbacks were published by Robert Hale, based
Right.
in London, and paperbacks were published by Acorn Independent Press.
Right. So how did you manage to get them published through a publisher?
Well, I just did what everybody else does, really. I sent them off to publishers, and they came bouncing back saying no thanks. And I did that many years with many books. And eventually, Robert Hale took on the series and published all 3.
Right.
But Robert Hale don't do paperbacks, or not in fiction. They only do non-fiction. So it was actually an approach from W.H. Smith locally, who said, was I going to have paperbacks published? And I said, no, probably not. And they said, well, if you can provide paperbacks, we'll put in a big order. So that then gave me the leverage to go to a small publisher and ask. Now, I tried a couple, and they weren't interested, and went to Acorn. And I think they've done an absolutely brilliant job.
They certainly have. If you want to hold them up, let me zoom in here.
Can you manage?
Yeah, that's it.
Have you got them in order?
That's it. Right. Now, Linda, you went a different way.
Well, I started off on short stories. I'd always written as a youngster, mainly for my own, hobby and things like this. And I went in for the Woman's Own Short Story competition in the year, whatever it was, and I won it, much to my surprise. That literally pushed me into the fact that people are willing to pay money for what my mother referred to as that thing you're doing, you get a proper job.
You're scribbling.
Yes, you're scribbling. Yeah. Go out. Originally it was like go out and go out in the sunshine and stop fighting about. And later it was, are you going to get a proper job? But I mean, by the time I was 14, I wanted to have a hardback book on the library shelves. I already knew that I wanted to do that, but it was such a thing that was so far out of the scope of the family. And anybody I knew, I mean, I didn't know anybody who wrote, that it was something that I would do as well as getting the proper job. And which is what happened, but then it becomes the proper job as the years progress. But it was short stories. I wrote for a lot of the British women's magazines. And I also wrote, I mean, everybody says, you write romance, you? And, yeah, I can, yeah. I also wrote things like horror stories, science fiction stories, crime stories. And I had a couple on Radio Homicide when they used to do short stories, and I thought, actually, this can work. This, and it was about then that I really started taking, rather than a hobby, looking towards improving your craft and you know all the stuff you have to do to get to the stage where you are good enough to be somebody will actually go out with money and pay to read your work. Yeah.
And both of you, you help other people. You belong to writers' groups. And
We find, I don't know if they do the crime, I suppose they do, but it's a case of people along the way have always helped me. And it's a cascade of skills. It must be something in writing, or maybe just writing in this country, where people do. There was writers' conferences up in Scarborough, again, many years ago, when I was at the stage where I didn't know whether to drop the short stories, which were paying me quite well, to try for a novel, which was going to take a year to write and might get absolutely nowhere. And you know, they would say, "Oh, I always remember a lady taking me in a t-shirt and you know, coffee in her hand and the breakfast things. Come in this corner now, tell me all about it." And she was the person who said, "You want to join the Romantic Novelists Association?" And my immediate reaction was, "What?" Is there something? And because they still now have a scheme of new writers, so that you join as a new writer, and you have it's approximately 12 months, isn't it?
Yes.
To write a novel which you submit and which gets a critique from a panel of established romance writers. And it's not just, you know, sort of boy meets girl romance.
No, please.
Romance is a huge umbrella which covers everything from romantic suspense right through to romantic thrillers and you know, again, chick lit.
It's actually the biggest selling genre if you take romance.
Yes.
Well, sells far more than crime.
Yes.
Yeah, well, someone like Barbara Cartland, who...
Well, yes, she did. But I mean, it's like somebody else in our area, Val Wood, who writes sagas. And they're not romances per se, but they come under the romance.
I would call them more historical novels.
Yes, exactly.
But that's the way it is. Penny, what about you? When you're helping people, is this a way of paying back what help you've had in the past?
I think Linda's got the nail on the head, really. It's just something about writing. And yes, writers do help other writers. I've been helped in much the same way. And people sort of come out of the woodwork. Friends, once they know you write. When I won, because I won a CWA Dagger for one of the books. And when I won that, the local press picked it up and things. And the mother of a guy who knows my husband came along at him to say, well, I've been trying to write this novel for years, this book. Can you help? Will you have a look at it? So, of course, I did. I gave her some comments. And in that particular instance, I said, if you want somebody who works actually as a writing tutor and is very good at this sort of thing, let me introduce you to Linda. And that particular book went with Linda through a year or so, was it?
Something like that,
and it ended up published and on the shelves.
Yes,
and I
did.
have a copy in the other room.
Yeah.
And it's an excellent novel from those beginnings. So.
This is it. But I mean, the great thing is the fact that lady, isn't it? I know what we're talking about. Yeah. She was willing.
We should say Jean Robinson.
Thank you.
Jean Robinson,
Jean
right.
Robinson, yeah. And she was willing to learn. I mean, when it came and I read it, my immediate reaction was, oh God. But I mean, I'm not somebody. I'm Northern woman, for God's sake. I'm not somebody who pussyfoots around. And one of my clients has actually called me Miss Tongue Lash. I mean, but it's
Right, it's not for the faint-hearted.
it's not for
coming
the
to you.
faint-hearted. Yes, because but there again, the industry isn't for the faint-hearted.
No.
It's even now in the media and on television. I mean, Alan Yentob was doing something about the big change from print to digital that's going on at the present moment. But he was still giving the idea that writers like, oh yes, we might get up at 10 o'clock and, do our nails, and then we'll consider doing, and then we'll have like drinks with friends, and then we might run off a couple of thousand words. And it's not like that. It is an absolute grind.
Yeah.
But it is something that we enjoy doing. And if you don't enjoy doing it, you aren't going to do it for very long.
Well, no, you get bored very quickly, wouldn't you?
It's yes.
Not like, I mean, Roland Dowell used to go out,
Yes.
his cup of his coffee, his
absolutely.
things, sit there, and he wasn't going to move until he'd done his set
And
amount of words.
you've got to be very blinkered like this. And before we started, before you read, we were talking about this. I mean, you've got an office out the back.
That's right, yeah.
I've
got a shed.
She's got a shed. I've got a room upstairs. The smallest bedroom in the house is actually my office, but it's too close. People will say, "Are we good? Is there any danger of any lunch?" or the phone rings, or because if my mother's like thinking, sort of, she's at home, so you ring her up, she's at home, and there's all this side of it. So I am again seriously thinking because I've got to get on with a self-imposed deadline, and again it's and the other distractions of course Wi-Fi. Oh, that's terrible! Masses of emails coming through because you are plugged in digitally, not just to the publishing world in this area or even this country.
We're talking the world.
We're talking the world.